The prairie wind bit against Emily's skin as she clutched the small bundle in her arms. Her baby, wrapped in the last blanket she owned, whimpered softly. She whispered soothing words, though her own heart felt too heavy to believe them. She had buried her husband just weeks ago. His family had turned her out the next morning, leaving her with nothing but her baby and a satchel of clothes. Her feet ached from walking. Her stomach had stopped growling hours ago. All she wanted now was a place, any place, where her baby could sleep safely for just one night. A faint light flickered in the distance. A ranch house? She hesitated. Strangers weren't always kind, but the cold was setting in, and she had no other choice. Taking a deep breath, Emily stepped off the dusty road and toward the light. By the time she reached the house, her legs felt like lead. She knocked softly on the weathered wooden door. It opened to reveal a tall man with a broad frame, a cowboy hat shadowing his face. His eyes, clear, steady, and the color of the summer sky, studied her carefully. "Evenin'," he said, his deep voice calm but cautious. "You lost?" Emily swallowed. I just need somewhere to stay for the night. I'll work if I have to." "Please, my baby's so tired." The man's gaze softened as he looked at the sleeping child. Something about the way he stood shifted as if a memory tugged at him. "You'd better come in," he said gruffly, stepping aside. "Name's Daniel. You can sit by the fire." Emily's throat tightened with relief as she crossed the threshold. Inside, the cabin smelled of wood smoke and stew. Daniel set a bowl on the table and gestured for her to sit. Emily hesitated, then slowly lowered herself into the chair. "Thank you," she said quietly. Daniel shrugged. Wouldn't sit right letting a baby go hungry. As she ate, she could feel his gaze, not harsh, just curious. "You headed somewhere?" he asked finally. Emily shook her head, fighting tears. "I don't know anymore. I just need to keep my baby safe." Daniel was silent for a moment, then said, "You can stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next." For the first time in weeks, Emily felt her chest loosen. The next morning, Emily woke to the sound of roosters crowing. She found Daniel outside, already at work feeding the horses. Without thinking, she set her baby in a basket nearby and joined him, fetching water and helping carry feed. "You don't have to do that," he said. "Surprised, I want to," she replied softly. "I need to feel useful." Daniel nodded, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "Most folks complain about ranch chores. You might be tougher than you look." Emily almost smiled back. It felt strange and good to have someone notice her strength. Days turned into a week. Emily helped with everything, cooking, cleaning, even mending fences. Daniel never said much, but he began to wait for her at supper, and sometimes they talked late into the night. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Emily finally told him about her husband and how she had been cast out. Daniel stared into the flames. "Lost my wife 3 winters ago," he said quietly. "House has been awful quiet since then." Emily's heart ached for him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something unspoken passed between them, something that made Emily's cheeks warm. One night, a storm rolled across the prairie. The wind howled and the baby woke crying. Emily rushed to comfort her child, but the thunder made her flinch. Daniel appeared, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "It's all right," he said softly. "House is solid. You're safe here." Their eyes met, and in the flicker of lantern light, Emily felt the walls she had built around her heart start to fall. Weeks passed. Emily stopped wondering when she should leave. She belonged here now, and Daniel never asked her to go. One evening, as the sky blazed orange, Daniel approached her as she rocked the baby on the porch. "I've been thinking," he said slowly. "This ranch could use more laughter. Could use someone like you." Emily's breath caught. "Are you saying—" Daniel smiled gently. "I'm saying this is your home if you want it." Tears filled her eyes. "I do," she whispered. Daniel stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. For the first time since her world had fallen apart, Emily felt whole again. Months later, Emily stood beside Daniel at the edge of the field, the baby in her arms. The house was no longer just a shelter. It was a home. Daniel slipped his arm around her shoulders. "Told you we'd figure it out," he said. Emily smiled through happy tears. "You didn't just give us a place to stay, Daniel. You gave us a life." He kissed her forehead, and the prairie seemed to glow with a quiet kind of magic. She had come to his ranch with nothing but fear and grief. Now she had love, a future, and the miracle she never thought she'd find. The days on the ranch grew longer and warmer as spring turned to summer. Emily's once tired face now carried a healthy glow. She had learned to ride one of the ranch horses, and Daniel often joined her for morning rides across the open prairie. The baby laughed and reached for the horses' manes whenever they returned. One evening, as they repaired a broken fence post together, Daniel glanced over at Emily. "You ever think about staying here for good?" he asked carefully. Emily paused, wiping sweat from her brow. "This place already feels like home," she said softly. Daniel's jaw tightened as though he was working up the courage to say something. "Then maybe it's time we make it official." Emily's heart skipped. "Official?" he nodded. "Not just you working here. You and the little one, as part of this family." Tears sprang to her eyes, but this time they were happy ones. A few weeks later, they stood beneath a big oak tree behind the ranch house. The preacher from town had ridden out, and a few neighbors came to witness. Emily wore a simple cream dress, and her baby was nestled in her arms. Daniel looked at her, with such quiet devotion that Emily's hands trembled as she took his. When the preacher asked Daniel if he would care for Emily and her child, his answer was steady and sure. "With all I've got," he said simply. And when Emily answered, her voice was thick with tears. "Yes," she whispered. When it was over, Daniel leaned down and kissed her, softly, reverently, as though she were the most precious thing in the world. As the months passed, the ranch thrived under both their hands. Emily found joy in planting a small garden, and Daniel built a new crib for the baby with his own hands. The first harvest came early that fall, and they worked side by side, loading hay and stacking it in the barn. "You've changed this place," Daniel said one evening as they rested on the porch. Emily smiled, rocking the baby. "Maybe this place changed me." Daniel reached over and took her free hand. "Maybe it saved us both." One chilly morning, Emily stood at the edge of the pasture watching Daniel saddle a horse. "Where are you off to?" she asked with a smile. "Town," he said. "Got something I need to pick up." When he returned that afternoon, he handed Emily a small, carefully carved wooden box. Inside was a locket engraved with 3 initials, E, D, and L, Emily, Daniel, and little Lily. "It's yours," he said, "so you never forget. You belong here." Emily threw her arms around him, the baby between them, and for a moment, the world felt perfectly still. She had once believed her life was over. Now, standing in Daniel's arms with the prairie wind around them, she knew she had been given her miracle, one she would never stop thanking God for. Winter settled on the prairie with heavy snow and long, quiet nights. Emily often sat by the fire, the baby now big enough to toddle across the floor, giggling as Daniel scooped her up with one strong arm. But one night, a blizzard rolled in, fierce and relentless. Daniel was late returning from checking the cattle. Emily stood at the window, heart hammering with worry. When the door finally burst open, Daniel stumbled in, coated in snow and shivering. "You could have frozen out there," Emily cried, rushing to pull his wet coat off. Daniel caught her hands, his teeth chattering. "Couldn't let the herd scatter. We'd have nothing come spring." She pressed her forehead to his chest, tears spilling. "I don't care about the cattle. I care about you." For the first time, Daniel let himself lean on her, letting her guide him to the fire. As she wrapped him in blankets, she realized how deeply their lives were intertwined. When the snow finally melted, the land seemed to breathe again. The baby, Lily, was now big enough to run barefoot in the fresh grass. Daniel had a surprise waiting. A foal, newly born, prancing by its mother near the fence. "She's yours," Daniel told Emily, smiling softly. "Thought you deserved something that's just for you." Emily's hand flew to her mouth. "Daniel." He stepped closer, brushing her hair from her face. "This ranch ain't mine alone anymore." "It's ours." Emily threw her arms around his neck, laughter and tears mingling, and as Lily giggled at the playful foal, Emily realized that this place, this man, had given her more than survival. They had given her joy. That summer, the little town nearby held its annual harvest festival. Emily hadn't been around crowds since before her husband's death, but Daniel convinced her to go. At the festival, neighbors greeted her warmly. praising her pies at the bake sale and cooing over Lily. Emily realized she wasn't just Daniel's wife anymore. She was part of this community. That night, as music played under the string lights, Daniel took her hand and led her to the edge of the dance floor. "Dance with me?" he asked. She hesitated, then smiled. "I'd like that." As they swayed under the stars, Emily felt like the girl she had been before grief. But this was better because now she knew what it was to lose everything and find it all again. Years later, the ranch was thriving. Emily stood on the porch watching Lily, now a little girl, help Daniel feed the chickens. Her heart swelled. She had once stood on a lonely road with nothing but a baby and a prayer. Now she had a family, a home, and a man who had turned her despair into love. Daniel came up the steps and slipped an arm around her waist. "What are you smiling at?" he asked. "Everything," she said simply. And as the sun set over their land, Emily knew that hope wasn't just something she had found. It was something she would carry with her, always.
Like, share, and subscribe.